The first thing David Miller noticed about the landmark 12 hotel was the way the city lights glimmered off the polished glass facade, throwing reflections onto the sidewalk like scattered jewels. He'd walked past this entrance 1,000 times, usually flanked by his executive team, always with a purpose, always as Mr. Miller. But tonight, he was just another guest, a 50-something man in jeans, a navy windbreaker, and a baseball cap pulled low over his salt and pepper hair. The doorman greeted him with a practiced smile. Not a hint of recognition in his eyes. That was the point. For years, David had built his reputation on being a hands-on leader, someone who knew every corner of his hotels, every face in the kitchen, and every regular guest by name. But lately, something had shifted. The landmark 12 was still a jewel in the city's crown, a 4-star oasis in the heart of Los Angeles with a rooftop pool, a renowned restaurant, and a lobby that smelled faintly of eucalyptus and ambition. Yet the reviews had started to sour. Guests complained about cold meals, indifferent service, and a sense that the old magic was gone. His managers assured him it was just a blip, a few tough weeks, nothing to worry about. But David knew better. He'd learned long ago that numbers only told half the story. So, he checked in under a different name, a credit card registered to a shell company, and let himself fade into the background. The front desk agent, a young woman named Lila, greeted him with polite but distant efficiency. "Welcome to the Landmark 12, Mr. Evans. Here's your key. Elevators are to the right." No offer to help with his single duffel bag, no mention of the spa, no smile that reached her eyes. David thanked her and headed up to the 10th floor, his senses tuned to every detail. His room was immaculate, the sheets crisp, the view spectacular, a sweep of city lights stretching all the way to the Hollywood Hills. But he wasn't here for the view. He was here for the truth. David's first stop was the hotel's signature restaurant. 12. The maitre d' greeted him with a thin smile, checked his reservation, and led him to a table by the window. The dining room was half full, the lighting soft and golden, the hum of conversation just loud enough to drown out the clatter from the kitchen. David scanned the menu, noting the ambitious dishes and the ambitious prices. He ordered the chef's tasting menu and settled in to watch. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. The server, Anna, was pleasant but distracted. She took his order with a practiced script, her eyes flicking to the clock behind the bar. When his first course arrived, a beet salad with goat cheese and candied walnuts, it was beautifully plated but tasted tired, the beets rubbery, the cheese bland. David watched as Anna delivered a steak to the following table, apologizing for the wait, her smile tight at the edges. As the meal wore on, David noticed the small things. The way Anna and another server, Mark, whispered behind the service station, the way the manager, Mr. Lawrence, hovered near the kitchen but never once checked on the guests. Halfway through his main course, David overheard Anna and Mark talking in hushed tones. "He told us to use the old stock again," Mark muttered, glancing over his shoulder. "Said the new order isn't coming till Friday. I don't like it, Anna. That salmon's been in the fridge for days." Anna sighed. "I know. But what are we supposed to do?" "Lawrence said we can't throw anything out unless it's actually spoiled. I'm not losing my job over a piece of fish." David's fork paused midair. He let the conversation wash over him, his heart sinking. This was worse than he'd feared. A few minutes later, a guest at the following table flagged down the manager. "Excuse me, my chicken is cold and smells off." "Mr. Lawrence offered a bland apology, promised to take care of it, and then, out of earshot, told Anna to just microwave it and send it back. Anna's face flushed, but she nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. David finished his meal in silence, making mental notes. When Anna returned with the check, he asked quietly, "Is everything okay here? You seem stressed." Anna's eyes widened, then darted away. "It's just busy, sir. Thank you for dining with us." He signed the bill and left a generous tip. watching as Anna pocketed it with a grateful nod. On his way out, he stopped by the lobby bar, ordered a club soda, and struck up a conversation with another guest. "How's your stay?" he asked. The man shrugged. "Room's nice. The restaurant's overrated. My wife got sick after dinner last night. Probably just a bug, but still." David thanked him and wandered back to his room, his mind racing. He sent a quick text to his assistant. It was nothing urgent. It was just a note to check the recent guest feedback files. Then he sat on the edge of the bed, staring out at the city, and let the weight of what he'd seen settle in. He thought about Anna and Mark, about the fear in their voices, the resignation in their eyes. He thought about Mr. Lawrence, who was more concerned with cost-cutting than quality. He thought about the guests, paying top dollar for an experience that was slipping, one shortcut at a time. David knew he couldn't fix it all in one night. But he also knew he couldn't ignore it. The cameras might have stopped rolling years ago, but the real story, the one that mattered, was unfolding right here, right now, in the quiet corners of his hotel. Tomorrow, he'd dig deeper. Tomorrow, he'd talk to the staff, the kitchen crew, and the guests, who didn't make a fuss but never came back. Tomorrow, he'd start the work of rebuilding, one conversation at a time. But tonight, as the city pulsed below and the landmark 12 glowed against the Los Angeles skyline, David Miller made himself a promise. He'd find out what was really happening after the cameras stopped, and he wouldn't rest until he made it right. David Miller woke up to the golden haze of a Los Angeles morning. Sunlight streaming in through the tall windows of his 10th floor room at the landmark 12. The city was already humming below, cars inching down Wilshire, the air a brisk 66 degrees Fahrenheit even before 8 a.m. But David's mind was somewhere else, still replaying the tension, the whispered complaints, the resigned faces he'd seen in the hotel's restaurant the night before. He'd come undercover to find the truth, and now that he'd tasted it, he couldn't let it go. He dressed simply, khakis, a soft blue shirt, and sneakers. Nothing about him said CEO. He wanted to blend in and see the hotel as any guest would. Down in the lobby, the morning crowd was gathering, business travelers in press suits, a family wrangling 2 sleepy kids, and a couple on vacation snapping selfies by the marble fountain. David grabbed a complimentary newspaper and strolled toward the restaurant 12, where breakfast service was in full swing. The dining room was bright, sunlight bouncing off polished silverware and white linens. But beneath the surface, the mood was tense. Anna, the server from last night, moved quickly between tables, her smile tight, her eyes darting to the kitchen every few minutes. Mark, another waiter, was stacking plates at the service station, jaw clenched, muttering under his breath. The manager, Mr. Lawrence, stood by the entrance, arms folded, scanning the room with a look that said he'd rather be anywhere else. David took a seat by the window and ordered coffee. The cup arrived lukewarm, the rim chipped. He watched as Anna apologized to a guest for a missing side of fruit, only to be brushed off by Lawrence, who told her, "Just comp their coffee and move on. We don't have time for this." Anna's shoulders slumped as she returned to the table. Across the room, an older couple hesitated by the buffet, staring at empty trays where eggs and bacon should have been. Mark walked by, barely glancing at them, and when the woman asked if more food would be coming, he shrugged. "Kitchen's backed up. It'll be a while." No apology, no offer to help. The couple exchanged a look, then quietly left. David's breakfast arrived, scrambled eggs, toast, and sausage. The eggs were cold, the sausage rubbery, the toast barely browned. He took a bite, forced a smile when Anna checked on him, and said, "It's fine, thank you." She nodded, relief flickering across her face. But David could see the truth. She was just trying to survive her shift. As he ate, he overheard Anna and Mark at the service station. "Did you see the salmon last night?" Mark whispered, voice low. "It was gray. The chef said to just cover it with sauce and send it out." Anna grimaced. I hate this. We're supposed to care about the food. Now it's all about cutting costs. Mark shook his head. Lawrence doesn't care. He just wants us to keep quiet and keep moving. David's stomach twisted. He watched as a guest at the following table flagged down Lawrence to complain about a sour-tasting yogurt parfait. Lawrence barely listened. I'll take it off your bill, he said, already turning away. The guest sighed, pushing the plate aside. After breakfast, David wandered the lobby, striking up conversations with other guests. A woman from Seattle told him the restaurant wasn't what it used to be. A businessman grumbled about slow service and cold coffee. A young couple said they'd ordered room service the night before and waited over an hour for soggy fries and a lukewarm burger. Back in his room, David made notes. The pattern was clear. Staff were demoralized, the kitchen was cutting corners, and management was indifferent. He needed to dig deeper. That afternoon, David returned to the restaurant for lunch. This time sitting at the bar. He watched as Anna and Mark prepped for the shift, their conversation hushed but urgent. I heard Jennifer got written up for complaining about the chicken, Mark said. She said it smelled off, but Lawrence told her to serve it anyway. Anna shook her head. I'm scared to say anything. I need this job. David's heart ached. He remembered his own days in the service industry, the pride he'd felt in doing things right. Now, his hotel was a place where fear and silence ruled. He decided to test the system. He ordered a salad, specifying, no onions. When it arrived, onions were scattered throughout. He flagged down Mark, who apologized and whisked the plate away. But David saw him roll his eyes as he walked back to the kitchen. 5 minutes later, the same plate returned, onions hastily picked off, but the flavor still there. David thanked him but left the salad untouched. Later, he watched as Anna helped a guest with mobility issues, guiding her to a table and fetching a cushion for her chair. Lawrence watched from across the room, unimpressed. When Anna returned, he pulled her aside. You're not paid to be a nurse, he snapped. Focus on your tables. Anna's face fell. But she nodded and went back to work. David's frustration grew. He saw the signs of a team stretched thin, unsupported, and afraid to speak up. He chatted with Jennifer, a young server, by the coffee station. How long have you worked here? He asked. Jennifer glanced around, lowering her voice. 6 months. It was great at first, but now, I don't know. I worry about the food. I've seen things I wish I hadn't. But if you complain, you get written up. Or worse. David nodded, his resolve hardening. He thanked her and slipped her a generous tip. Hang in there, he said quietly. That evening, David dined in the restaurant one last time, watching as the same patterns repeated. Guests complained, and the staff apologized, but management ignored them. The food was inconsistent, the service rushed, and the mood was tense. As he walked back to his room, David felt a mix of anger and sadness. He'd built the Landmark 12 to be a place of excellence, a haven for guests and staff alike. Now, it was a shadow of what it could be. But he also felt a spark of hope. He'd seen Anna's kindness, Jennifer's honesty, and Mark's quiet frustration. There were good people here, people who wanted to do the right thing if only they were given the chance. David knew what he had to do. Tomorrow, he'd dig even deeper. He'd talk to the kitchen staff, the housekeepers, the night crew. He'd find out just how deep the rot went, and then he'd start to fix it. Because after the cameras stopped, after the reviews faded, what mattered most was the truth. And David Miller was determined to bring it to light, no matter what it took. The hotel kitchen was a world apart from the polished marble and soft jazz of the Landmark 12's lobby. If you stepped through the swinging doors, you'd find a different kind of energy, hotter, faster, and far less forgiving. David Miller, still undercover as a long-term guest, knew he needed to get closer to the source of the problems he tasted and witnessed in the restaurant. The reviews, the cold eggs, The whispers among servers, none of it added up unless you saw the machine from the inside. He started by making himself a regular. Every morning, he'd show up for breakfast. Always at a different time, sometimes sitting at the bar, sometimes at a corner table with a view of the kitchen doors. He became a familiar face to the staff, the quiet guy from 1017. Always with a notepad and a polite smile. He'd chat with Anna and Mark, the servers, asking about their day, their favorite dishes, and what they wished was different. At first, they were guarded. But as the days passed and David's questions stayed friendly, their stories began to slip out. One rainy Thursday, Anna lingered at his table after the lunch rush. She looked tired. Her hair pulled back in a messy bun, her hands red from constant washing. "You know," she said, glancing over her shoulder, "this place used to be different. We cared about the food. No. It's all about cutting corners. The chef's a good guy, but he's scared. We all are." David nodded, listening. "What changed?" Anna hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Mr. Lawrence? He's all about the numbers. He tells us to serve food that's on the edge and says the guests won't notice. But they do. And we do, too." Mark joined them, wiping his hands on his apron. "Last week, Jennifer got written up for refusing to serve chicken that smelled off. She's just a kid, but she cares. Now she barely says a word." David's heart tightened. He remembered his own early days in hospitality, the pride he'd felt in serving a perfect meal, the shame when something went wrong. He thanked Anna and Mark, left a generous tip, and made a mental note to find Jennifer. That afternoon, he found her in the staff hallway, restocking coffee cups. She was barely 20, with nervous eyes and a soft voice. "I'm just trying to do my job," she whispered. "But if you speak up, you get in trouble. I need this paycheck. My mom's sick, and I'm paying rent for both of us." David offered a reassuring smile. "You're not alone," he said quietly, meaning it more than she could know. He spent the next 2 days talking to everyone he could, housekeepers, bellmen. Even the night security guard who saw everything but said little. The same story echoed everywhere: fear, pressure, a sense that the hotel's soul was slipping away. Some staff, like Anna and Jennifer, were quietly angry. Others, like Mark, had resigned themselves to just getting through each shift. But the kitchen was where the absolute rot was hiding. David managed to strike up a conversation with Raoul, a line cook who'd been at Landmark 12 for nearly a decade. Raoul was proud of his work, but his eyes clouded when David asked about the food. "We used to throw out anything that wasn't perfect," Raoul said, voice low. "Now Lawrence says we can't afford it. I've seen him send out fish that should have been tossed. He says, 'Just add more sauce. No one will know. But we know. And the guests know, too.'" David's anger simmered. He thanked Raoul, then watched as the chef, a middle-aged man named Victor, argued quietly with Mr. Lawrence near the walk-in fridge. "We can't serve this," Victor insisted, holding up a tray of wilted greens. Lawrence's reply was cold. "Make it work. We're not running a charity." That night David sat in his room, staring out at the city lights, his mind racing. He'd uncovered enough to know this wasn't just a few bad apples, it was a culture problem. This management rot started at the top and infected everything below. He thought about Anna's tired eyes, Jennifer's fear, and Raoul's pride turning to shame. He thought about the guests, families on vacation, business travelers, couples celebrating anniversaries, paying for an experience that was slowly being hollowed out. But David also saw hope. Even in the mess, some people cared. Anna gave free desserts to kids on their birthdays. Jennifer, who risked a write-up to protect a guest. Raoul still tried to make every plate as good as he could, even when the ingredients fought him. He knew what he had to do. The next day, he asked Anna to join him for coffee in the lobby. "If you could change one thing about the restaurant," he asked, "what would it be?" She didn't hesitate. "I'd want us to care again. I'd want to be proud of what we serve. David nodded, his decision made. He spent the afternoon gathering more stories and more evidence, documenting everything. He watched as Mr. Lawrence berated a dishwasher for being too slow, as Mark quietly fixed a guest's order out of his own pocket, and Jennifer wiped away tears after another scolding. By the end of the week, David had a complete picture: a staff desperate for leadership, a management team obsessed with numbers, and a culture where fear had replaced pride. That Friday night, the restaurant was busy, the dining room buzzing with the clink of glasses and the low hum of conversation. David sat near the kitchen, watching, waiting. He saw Anna and Mark working double time, Jennifer creeping, and Raoul sweating over the grill. Mr. Lawrence prowled the floor, eyes sharp, voice clipped. David finished his meal, left a final tip, and slipped out into the fabulous Los Angeles night. He felt a mix of exhaustion and resolve. He'd seen the truth behind the curtain, the reality after the cameras stopped rolling. Now, it was time to step out of the shadows and make things right, not just for the guests, but for the people who made Landmark 12 what it was. Tomorrow, he would reveal who he really was. And tomorrow, the real work of rebuilding will begin. The conference room on the mezzanine level of Landmark 12 was rarely used for anything but investor meetings or wedding planners. That morning, though, the room was packed with every restaurant and kitchen employee, a few housekeepers, and even some front desk staff who'd heard rumors that something big was about to go down. The windows looked out over the city, but inside, the air was thick with tension and curiosity. No one knew why they'd been summoned. Anna stood near the back, nervously twisting a napkin in her hands. Mark leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes darting between coworkers. Jennifer sat with her shoulders hunched, looking like she'd rather disappear. Even Mr. Lawrence, the restaurant manager, looked uneasy, perched stiffly at the end of the table. At exactly 9 a.m., David Miller walked in, not as the anonymous guest he'd been for the past week, but as himself. He wore a tailored navy suit, but there was nothing stiff about his posture. He looked every person in the eye as he made his way to the front of the room. The staff exchanged glances. Some recognized him instantly, others whispered, "That's the owner." David didn't waste time. "Thank you all for coming in early. I know you're busy, and I appreciate it." He paused, letting the room settle. "I want to talk to you about what's really happening at Landmark 12. Not what's in the reports, not what's in the brochures, what's actually happening every day in this hotel." A ripple of discomfort moved through the crowd. Mr. Lawrence's jaw tightened. Anna's eyes widened. David continued, his tone steady but full of quiet force. "For the past week, I've been staying here as a guest. I ate in the restaurant, I spoke with guests, I watched how we treat people, and how we treat each other." He let that hang in the air. "And I need to be honest. I'm disappointed. I'm angry. And I'm heartbroken." He turned to Anna and Mark. "I heard your conversations. I saw you struggle to do the right thing, even when it cost you. Anna, I watched you comfort a guest who was embarrassed about a ruined meal. Mark, I saw you take money out of your own pocket to fix a kitchen mistake. Jennifer, I know you got written up for refusing to serve food you knew wasn't safe. That's not just courage, that's integrity." He looked at the rest of the staff. "But I also saw something else. I saw fear. I saw people afraid to speak up, afraid to lose their jobs if they did the right thing. I saw a management culture that values numbers over people, that cuts corners, and expects you to keep quiet. That ends today." Mr. Lawrence shifted in his seat, his face flushing. "With respect, Mr. Miller, we've been under a lot of pressure to meet targets." David cut him off, his voice calm but firm. "Pressure is no excuse for endangering guests or demoralizing staff. I've read the reports. I know about expired food, written warnings, and threats. I know you've told people to keep quiet or risk their jobs. That's not how we do things at Landmark 12. He turned back to the staff. If you have something to say about the food, about the management, about anything, now is your chance. You will not be punished for honesty. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Anna stepped forward, voice trembling. I just want to be proud of where I work again. I want to serve safe food that I'd feed to my own family. I want to feel like I matter. Jennifer spoke up next. I was scared. I still am. But I can't keep serving food that isn't right. I care about our guests. Mark nodded. We all do. We just need support. David listened, nodding. He looked at Mr. Lawrence. You've put profits before people. You've created a culture of fear and silence. That's not leadership. That's a failure. Lawrence tried to defend himself, but David shook his head. You're being relieved of your duties, effective immediately. We'll be conducting a full review of your management practices. Anyone else who feels they can't support the values of honesty, safety, and respect is free to leave now, no questions asked. A stunned silence filled the room. A few staff members quietly gathered their things and left. Most stayed, relief and hope flickering across their faces. David turned back to the group. For those who remain, things are going to change. We're investing in new training, better food safety protocols, and open-door policies. If you see something wrong, you say something. If you need help, you ask. If you have ideas, you can share them. And you will be rewarded for doing the right thing. He paused, letting the words sink in. We're not just a hotel. We're a team. We're a family. And families take care of each other. The meeting ended with applause, tentative at first, then growing stronger as people realized this wasn't just talk. Anna smiled through tears. Jennifer hugged Mark. Even the kitchen staff, usually stoic, grinned and clapped each other on the back. Later that day, David met privately with Anna, Jennifer, and Raoul from the kitchen. He thanked them for their honesty and bravery, promised them support, and asked for their help in rebuilding the culture from the inside out. I can't do this alone, he admitted. But together, we can make Landmark 12 the place it was always meant to be. He also addressed the guests, sending a letter to every room apologizing for recent issues and promising a renewed commitment to quality and service. He invited feedback, good and bad, and assured everyone that their voices mattered. By the end of the week, the changes were already visible. The kitchen was cleaner, the food fresher, and the staff was lighter on their feet. Guests noticed the difference, too. Smiles were real, service was attentive, and the old warmth was coming back. David knew the work wasn't done. There would be more tough conversations and more hard choices. But as he walked through the lobby that evening, watching Anna laugh with a guest and Jennifer confidently serving a table, he felt hope for the first time in months. The cameras might have stopped rolling, but the real story was just beginning. One built on courage, honesty, and the simple act of doing what's right, even when no one's watching. Sometimes, the real work begins after the big reveal. When the cameras are gone, the applause fades, and everyone is left to face the truth in the daylight. That's exactly what happened at Landmark 12. The week after David Miller's dramatic meeting, the hotel felt like a place in transition, a building caught between old habits and a new hope. The Los Angeles sun poured through the lobby windows, casting long golden beams across the marble as if daring everyone to step out of the shadows and into something brighter. David made good on his promises. The very next day, he gathered the leadership team, new faces and old hands alike, into the boardroom. He didn't mince words. We're not patching holes anymore, he said, his tone even but steely. We're rebuilding the foundation. He announced sweeping changes, a full review of food safety protocols, a new supplier contract for fresher ingredients, and a third-party audit of every kitchen process. But it wasn't just about the food. David made it clear, respect, honesty, and transparency were now non-negotiable. Anna, who'd once felt invisible, was invited to join the new staff council. She sat at the table with department heads, her voice shaking at first but growing stronger as she shared stories from the floor. Jennifer, whose quiet courage had once been punished, was promoted to team lead and started mentoring new hires on both ethics and service. Raoul from the kitchen was given a raise and a say in menu planning. Even Mark, who had nearly given up, found himself energized by the new openness. He started a weekly staff huddle, where anyone could share ideas or concerns. The changes rippled outward. The kitchen was deep cleaned from top to bottom, new equipment was installed, and every chef and line cook was retrained. David brought in a respected hospitality consultant to run workshops on guest care and team communication. The first session was awkward, old wounds ran deep, but as people shared their frustrations and hopes, something shifted. Laughter replaced grumbling. Staff who had kept their heads down began to look each other in the eye. Guests noticed, too. The first week, a family from Chicago left a handwritten note at checkout. "Best meal we've had in LA. Your staff made us feel at home." A business traveler who'd once sworn off the hotel posted a glowing review. The new Landmark 12 is the real deal. Service with heart. The kitchen staff started leaving little touches, fresh herbs on the plates and handwritten thank you cards for returning guests. Anna even organized a family meal for the team every Friday. A tradition that quickly became the highlight of the week. David didn't hide in the office. He walked the floors, greeted guests, and took time to listen. He made a point of thanking people by name, housekeepers, bellhops, dishwashers, reminding them that every role mattered. When he saw Jennifer calmly handle a difficult guest, he praised her in front of the team. When Raoul suggested a new breakfast special, David put it on the menu and tried it himself. Of course, not everyone embraced the changes. A few managers and servers who clung to the old ways quietly resigned. David let them go, wishing them well but standing firm. "This is a new chapter," he told the remaining staff. "If you're here, you're part of the solution." The transformation wasn't just about rules and routines. It was about restoring pride. Anna started coming in early, checking the dining room for details she once ignored. Mark, who used to dread the lunch rush, now welcomed the challenge. Jennifer, once timid, became a source of calm for nervous new hires. Even the guests seemed to sense the difference. The lobby buzzed with conversation, the restaurant filled with laughter, and the staff looked each other in the eye with something like trust. One afternoon, David received an email from a guest who had witnessed the old regime and the new. "I've stayed here for years," it read, "and I've never seen your staff so happy. Whatever you're doing, keep going. It's contagious." David forwarded the note to the entire team. "This is what happens," he wrote, "when we choose courage over comfort and kindness over shortcuts." As the months passed, Landmark 12 became a case study in the industry. Other hotel managers visited to see the turnaround. Trade magazines ran features on the post-camera transformation. But for David, the real reward was quieter: Anna's smile as she led a pre-shift meeting, Jennifer's calm as she guided a new server through a busy dinner, Raoul's pride as he plated a dish he'd helped design. On a warm spring evening, David stood by the restaurant windows, watching the city lights flicker across the skyline. Anna joined him, her eyes bright. "I never thought I'd see this place come alive again," she said softly. David smiled. "It was always here. We just had to remember what mattered." She nodded, glancing back at the bustling dining room. "Thank you for listening. For believing in us." He shook his head. "Thank you for speaking up. For not giving up, even when it was hard." As the night wore on, David reflected on the journey. He'd come undercover to find the truth, but what he'd discovered was something more profound: the power of trust. The courage it takes to change, and the simple, stubborn hope that people can do better, if given the chance. The cameras had stopped rolling, but the real story was just beginning. Landmark 12 was no longer just a hotel. It was a community, a family, a place where kindness was the rule, not the exception. And as David walked through the lobby, greeting staff and guests alike, he knew the lesson would stay with him forever. True leadership isn't about being seen. It's about seeing others, lifting them up, listening to their truths, and building something that lasts. Because in the end, the real legacy of Landmark 12 wasn't in the marble floors or 5-star menus. It was in the people, their dignity, their resilience, and their willingness to do the right thing, even when no one was watching. That was the story worth telling long after the cameras stopped. Long after the spotlight faded, Landmark 12 found its proper rhythm. The staff, once wary and guarded, now moved with a sense of pride, Anna's laughter echoing through the dining room, Jennifer guiding new hires with patience, Raoul plating each dish like it mattered. Guests noticed the difference. Warm greetings at the door, food that tasted fresh, and a team that worked together, not against each other. David Miller watched from the lobby, quietly grateful. He'd learned that real change isn't about grand gestures but about showing up, listening, and having the courage to do what's right, even when no one's watching. The lesson was simple but powerful. Kindness and respect transformed everything, from the kitchen to the corner office. Have you ever witnessed or lived through an undercover boss moment, when someone's true character changed a workplace for the better? Share your story in the comments below.